Welcome in, writer. Today I want to discuss what character arc, psychotherapy, and spiritual awakening have in common. We're going to get pretty deep with this one, so I would recommend you focus in, pay attention, really walk with me through this. As for where I'm getting some of this stuff, some of it is from personal experience, some of it is from working with writers, doing one-on-one coaching, this sort of thing. But there's a few books here specifically. These are the two big ones that you should focus on here. So Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. Obviously a big book in story writing and screenwriting. George Lucas used this one a lot to write the Star Wars series. And this is going deep into the symbolism and the overall meaning of not just screenplays and screenwriting, but story, mythology, and how that is showing this initiation, descent, and return that we go through when we are clearing out ourselves, right? Clearing out baggage and these kinds of things. The other one, this is the other one that I would highly recommend, Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. These two books are saying a lot of the same stuff from two different angles. This is more your storyteller, mythological studier angle, and this is more your psychotherapy. Carl Jung was a psychologist, psychotherapist, spent a lot of time getting deep into people's brains and figuring out how they worked as well as his own brain. The last one that I will also throw in here that I do think is kind of the third on the list, but is still a really interesting read, and I also think the hardest read of the three, is Joseph Campbell's Oriental Mythology. So this is a bit of this one has kind of been swept under the rug, probably because the name, some people think the name is offensive, I'm assuming. But look at this. I love this. Let me make sure you can see this. I love this cover here. Look at this, right? This is exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about here, but in its own way, right? You see there's like the yin yang here, right in the very center, right? We got the light, we got the dark. We have this wheel of time, the wheel of the seasons. We have all these different characters and like cultures inside of it. It's like a big wheel, right? It's the wheel, it's the story circle, it's the hero's journey. It's that idea. Externally and internally, it's this separation, initiation, return idea that we're trying to talk about. So, how does all this different stuff, all this crazy brain stuff, how does it actually come together in a way that is useful and makes any sense? So, let's do this. Let's do this. And then let's also do this. Let's see, what's the best way to draw whatever. I'm gonna do, what's the best way? Maybe like a diamond? I'm gonna do it like that. Make like fangs. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be a snake. And then the snake has his body. Right, okay. So, this is my cobra head. Hopefully you can see that. It kind of makes sense as the cobra head here. But essentially, just like Harmon has talked about, just like Jung has talked about, like Joseph Campbell talked about, we have our conscious and our unconscious. Now these two words can be a little bit weird to really understand. Another way to think about this is we have our head, which would be related to our conscious brain, our sort of present moment, experience and ability to make decisions, this sort of thing. And then we also have the body, which is more let's say, you could even say, this is all of the unconscious instinctual what's another word here? You know, the unconscious instinctual elements of yourself that you don't really have control over, right? So as we are going, as we're getting older, all of this, as we live, what happens is we gain experiences, right? There's a moment that happens to us in the present, and that can be something, let's say it's something dark. Let's say something bad happens to us. So in our unconscious, we had something that happened to us up here, right? And we had a conscious moment that occurred. And now, as we move forward, that unconscious thing, it now sits in our unconscious, right? Waiting to be dealt with, right? And this, you know, you could say that this is a trauma, right? Another way to think about a trauma is it is a specific moment. It is essentially an event. You could even say that is a story that then creates a belief that now you are operating off of in your conscious mind based on this traumatic event. Until it is dealt with, it now has a certain control over you, right? It is governing your decisions until you realize that that trauma event is the thing that is governing the decisions that you're making in the present. So how I like to think about this is in our conscious mind, or let's say in our present moment, right? Right now I'm here in the present moment talking, using my conscious awareness. You could also say that's the masculine element. Everybody has that. It's what I'm choosing to do right now. And so in the present conscious moment, this is where we actually get to make choices, right? Like, so when we're making a conscious choice, and that choice can be very, very conscious, we can be very aware of that choice, or we can be less aware of that choice. But what we're doing is, what happens is, we make choices in the present moment, and sometimes those choices are motivated off of traumatic experiences, okay? And until we understand this traumatic experience, we're going to make a choice that is based on that traumatic experience, and now we sort of get in this loop, right? So you have a traumatic thing happen to you. This causes anxiety, frustration. In where? Where does this trauma actually sit, right? It sits in your body, okay? So what's happening is your body is literally carrying all of the experiences and memories and feelings that you have not let go of. Your body is what stores that, right? Like, it stores that anxious energy in different places, and this is kind of where people get into chakras and stuff. And I'm not getting into that today, but when this traumatic event happens to you, it stores in your body. And this is very important because this event, and this is why it's all story-based. Everything is story-based, and the most important stories that you are trying to figure out is the stories that you have told yourself. And are those stories true? And should you really be continuing in that stress, that pain? But you have to be able to recognize that pain. So what's happening is, everything is a story. What happens is, in your life, this story, this traumatic event happens to you. This is a moment in time, right? This is a moment in time. It is, and now it is a story. It is a story. It is an event. Call it what you want. But this thing, usually also attached to some sort of like important person in your life. Most of the time, these traumatic events are attached to somebody who is important to you, right? Deeply important to you. This is why most of our trauma, a large majority of our trauma, can come from parental relationships and can come from romantic relationships. Why? Well, because a person that is very important to you emotionally, right? This is an emotionally important person. That emotionally important person to you hurt you in some way, let you down in some way, lied to you in some way, and now you have an emotionally charged belief that you are carrying. Now, you are not necessarily always conscious of that belief, and many times we suppress, right? We don't want to work through our problems. We don't want to really understand why we feel the way that we feel. And so we suppress this belief. And again, this belief is not attached to just a logic belief. It is more than just a logical belief. It is a feeling, right? Because it is a feeling attached to an emotionally important person in a moment that happened in your real life, right? An experience that you had that now creates a belief that you are either aware of or unaware of, that you are now using or relying to make choices in the present moment. This is why your body is what's carrying your past, right? How you feel, how when you have addictions or suppressions or these sorts of things, right? Your body is what's carrying all of that pent up energy. And so then what happens? Well, now when you have this, now you are confronted with choices. So for example, let's say you have this traumatic event, and now because of this traumatic event, you now use something, you make a choice to indulge in some sort of substance, let's say, in the present moment so that you can feel better in the present moment, and so that the stress that's being carried unconsciously in your body can be eased, not by you actually dealing with that traumatic story and the belief and feelings that came from that you are storing in your unconscious body. Instead of dealing with this, when the feeling, that stress, that anxiety comes up into your present moment, then now you have this choice, right? Okay, do I indulge once again in some sort of habit that I know isn't good for me? Or do I try and see if I can actually go deep within myself and can I actually find this, right? I'm looking for this blackness that I've been carrying around in my soul so that I can actually release it, not just temporarily, not just halfway, but really release, right? Really release that thing. And so you can do this in a number of ways, okay? For example, one way that people do this is through therapy, right? What a therapist is doing fundamentally is they are helping you. They are, when a therapist is asking, and how did that make you feel, this sort of thing, right? They're trying to find the old stories that are plaguing you. This is what's also great about this is it's not that it's just infinite and unknown. Like, you can many times find the story or find the problem, right? Like, it is findable because it happened to you. Now, the younger you might have been when that traumatic event happened to you, the more difficult it is for you to find it and deal with it, because the younger we are, the more impressionable we are. And that's also why it's very important that children are protected, right? It's very important to protect the innocence of children for as long as possible, because if they're storing traumatic events at a very young age, then it's going to be all the more difficult for them to actually dive deep, find those things, and do what they need to do to release those feelings the younger they are. And so it's sad to think about, but yeah, the younger you are, when something happens to you, the more that's going to stick with you. And that doesn't mean that it defines your life, but it does mean that it will require that much more digging from you to go into that. And so you can do that with a therapist, and a therapist is kind of helping you find those stories, right? When a therapist is letting you talk and talk and talk, eventually they're looking for you to tell stories, and they're looking to see what sort of beliefs and feelings and emotionally important people or an individual is attached to that story that is causing this distress, causing this problem, causing that person to have an extreme desire for something that is harmful to them, let's say. That's what a therapist is trying to do. Now, but you can also do this in other ways. So for example, writing a story. Writing a story is so valuable, and it's so interesting, as I have done as much screenwriting coaching as I have done, where many times you are coming into this world of finding that trauma from a whole different angle. You're literally giving your own names for the characters of your life, and having your main character go through this arc journey that in many ways is very likely connected to you and your arc and your traumas and your way of seeing the world. And so if you wanted to do this totally by yourself, you could write that story, and then you can kind of analyze why did you make the decisions that you made? Why did these certain characters come up? Why was this dark character, this shadow character in your story? Why did this character have this particular belief and feeling? Why did my main character struggle with these particular stresses and that sort of thing? Or you can also, do script coaching, something like this, where you're actually able to have a third party, somebody outside of you, look at this and say, wow, it's really interesting that these were the conscious choices that you made with your story. And now we can kind of talk about, why did you make those choices? This was an interesting choice here. This was an interesting choice here. You use this type of symbolism here. Why did you choose those things? And this is also where this book comes in, right? Man and His Symbols. Because a lot of the time, when we are getting into all this stuff, right, that is in our unconscious self, that's really hard to kind of sort it all, because you can have all these different things that are connected to all this other stuff, and it becomes this whole web of who you are inside. It can be very difficult to sort all out. And a lot of the times, we aren't perfectly clear with ourselves about what's going on. So a lot of times we create symbols. Symbols come up from the unconscious mind, and this is from the events and things that have happened to us, and then our unconscious self is translating those events into a language that is outside spoken language, the language of symbolism, which is what Carl Jung is talking about and what Joseph Campbell is talking about. And through that language of symbolism, it starts to show us what we're attached to, what we're focusing on, and how that is connected to whatever trauma or stressor that is inside of us that we need to deal with. So this is from page 9 of Man and His Symbols. I know I'm not reading from the book because I've got my notes here. But Jung says, before the beginning of this century, Freud and Joseph Breuer had recognized that neurotic symptoms, hysteria, certain types of pain, and abnormal behavior are in fact symbolically meaningful. They are one way, hysteria, certain types of pain, and abnormal behavior, right? Body problems are in fact symbolically meaningful. They are one way in which the unconscious mind expresses itself, just as it may in dreams. A patient, for instance, who is confronted with an intolerable situation may develop a spasm whenever he tries to swallow, because he can't swallow it. Continuing on, Freud made the simple but penetrating observation that if a dreamer is encouraged to go on talking about his dream images and the thoughts that these prompt in his mind, he will give himself away and reveal the unconscious background of his ailments. The unconscious background of his ailments would be the story that person is telling themselves about who they are, what happened to them, about the world. And that story is now influencing that person's decisions that they're making in the present. Because our conscious moment power is the ability to make a choice, right? This is our power in the present moment, right? We do not have access to everything we have experienced, right? The unconscious body, you carry everything. The unconscious body doesn't forget anything. It's only the conscious mind that forgets or can't remember things and all of this. But you remember everything that's happened. Your body remembers everything that's happened. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, okay, how do we bring that up to the forefront? And so if you are, this also, so another way to talk about this belief, which is a lie, okay? So this is where truth, lie, and the stories are so important. Because a lie, this is a dis-ease of the mind. So a traumatic event creates a story, usually involving an emotionally important person, most of the time mother, father. Those are the biggest ones. And then that traumatic event creates a story that then creates a lie, and that lie now is a dis-ease of the mind. It is a disease of the mind, a dis-ease of the mind. And now, until this lie can be dealt with through your own personal character arc, that lie will fester, and that lie will influence the choices that you're making in the present. So if you have, let's use an example. Let's say you had a moment in your life where a parent left, right? Your parent leaves you. That parent is an extremely emotionally important person. Your father and your mother are going to be, no matter if you want them to or not, they are always going to be two of the most emotionally important people to you because of your direct connection to them. So if they leave, now this creates a lie. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not good enough for my parents. They left me, and therefore I'm not good enough. That then becomes the lie. That then becomes the dis-ease of the mind. Now, this lie that I'm not good enough because of what my parents did, now is influencing the bad choices that I'm making in the present. So because I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not going to go after something that I really want. Because I feel like I'm not good enough, I don't have a problem numbing my pain, indulging in addictions and things that are going to be destructive to me. And so as long as that lie is sitting there, it's going to be really, really easy to make the wrong choice, or the choice that is self-destructive to you over and over and over and over and over and over again. And this is how you get in this loop, right? Because you haven't dealt with the story yet. You haven't dealt with the lie yet. You haven't dealt with the dis-ease of the mind. And that's not simple to do, especially because emotions are very difficult to work through, right? You can have a head knowledge of, you could tell somebody whose parents left them, no, you're still valuable, you're still worthy, that doesn't mean anything. But it doesn't make them feel better, right? It doesn't actually change how they feel until they really can let go of that lie and find a powerful truth that they can rely on that makes them know that they are good enough, that they are worthy of love. Okay, so looks like my camera decided to stop recording. as I kind of went through another 40 minutes of talking here. So I will just talk through a few key things here that I wanted to add. So first, dreams and dream symbolism are connected to trauma events and stories heavily. Your dreams have a symbolic language. They are what your unconscious mind is fixated on or focused on, and your dreams are communicating those fixations or those focuses back to you through symbolism. And this is exactly what Carl Jung was talking about in this book. That's the whole purpose of this book, is understanding that deeper layer of dream symbolism and understanding that dreams are not random. No dream is random. Freud understood this, Carl Jung understood this, Joseph Campbell talks about this. Dreams is your own mind communicating to you outside of the language of words. It is communicating through you through symbols and through story, through these less linear, more abstract story that are showing you key elements of what your brain is focused on at any given point. And so by understanding your dreams, by writing them down, by keeping a dream journal, these sorts of things, you are helping to see your own self. You are helping to understand what it is that your unconscious mind is focused on at any given present moment. Quite key. Then, the other main thing I wanted to discuss here is that these trauma events, right, these sort of black stresses, circles that hold onto us, they store in our body. Like physically they store in our body, because your body remembers everything that it's gone through. Your body is, you could even say that your body is your unconscious mind. You know, your conscious mind is up here, your decision maker, the thing that actually makes choices. Your unconscious mind is storing these stresses in different areas of your body. And so understanding like, wow, I have an ailment here, or I feel stress at this part of my body, or my neck seems to always be carrying stress. Those stressors are connected to traumatic events, ways of being that you are now storing in your body. And so while you're also looking for what that story is, understanding what sort of lies were caused, what sort of diseases of the mind were caused from that story, you're also finding where those stress points are in your unconscious instinctual body. Because because you want to do both of them at the same time so that you can make the right choices for you in the present moment. That's what we're doing here. So we're trying to find those traumatic events which are stories. A traumatic event is a story involving an emotionally important person to you that set up a belief, aka a lie, aka a dis-ease of the mind. And now this belief and these emotions, this negativity is now causing choices in the present moment because your body is stressed. Because your neck is stressed, because your body is stressed, because you feel anxious, you feel a tightness, you feel frustration, right? You feel something in your body that is now influencing the choices that you're making. And by knowing being aware of where those bodily stressors are, and also being aware of those traumatic events that have happened to you, you're able to release the stress, you're able to release the emotion, you're able to find that belief. And if you can find that story and reframe that story, change the narrative that you've told about yourself. For example, I'm not worthy of love, and realize, no, this other person made decisions likely out of their own lack of self-love that then heavily impacted me. And then because of that, they made the decisions that they made that ended up harming me. And so rather than me taking on the guilt and the blame of that and believing that I am also unworthy of love, I must break that cycle and understand that they made those decisions because of their situation, but now I can make a different choice. I am the head of my own body. I am the head of the snake. I can make a different choice now. I do not have to repeat the patterns of the past. I do not have to keep myself in a constant cycle of going like this over and over. I can clear the dis-ease of the mind by understanding where that traumatic event happened, understanding the story that created that traumatic event, understanding the emotionally important person that was connected to that traumatic event that I loved and who hurt me, that created a belief inside of me that was a lie. Now I have emotion attached to that lie, and that emotion is now expressing itself in stress in my body. And by becoming aware of where that stress is, and becoming aware of the story, and becoming aware of the lie that that story created, we can release the stress in the body. We can change that lie, reframe the story, stop believing the lie, and then this allows us to make better choices for ourselves in the present moment. Instead of continuing in self-sabotaging activity, we can make better choices for ourselves now. Because now we can have better judgment, because we see ourselves not in this traumatic state, but we're able to understand what happened there, what narrative it created, what lie it created, and now we can use our better judgment to make a better choice for ourselves in the present moment. That is what we're trying to do. And that is what a character arc is. This is a character ghost. Traumatic event is a character ghost. It is a story. It's a story in the past, right? A character ghost is going to be that. A traumatic story from the past that created a belief and an emotional attachment to that belief in that character that is now influencing the choices that they're making now. And only by finding and dealing with that internally can they then make a different choice in the external world now and have a character arc. That happens in a fictional story, and it happens in real life. That's what therapy is doing. That's what counseling is doing. Trying to find that trauma, find that story, reframe that story, clear the lie, release the negative emotion that's storing itself as stress, and become whole again. And that's also what a spiritual awakening is. The great thing about therapy is that you get somebody else to help you through that. Sometimes with the spiritual awakening, it's you have to be on your own path. You have to be your own therapist. And you can be your own therapist. But it also helps very much to speak to someone else. I hope that's clear. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.